The halls of Casterly Rock are, as always, a monument to Lannister pride, a testament to their wealth carved into the very bones of the earth. But on this day, something new echoes through its corridors, the thin, reedy cry of a newborn babe. Joanna Lannister, wife to Lord Tywin, has delivered a son. The birthing chambers are still steeped in the aftermath, the air thick with the cloying scent of herbs and blood. Maesters fuss over Joanna, their faces etched with relief and exhaustion. She is pale, weakened by the ordeal, but alive, and in her arms, wrapped in Lannister crimson, lies her child. From the shadows of the room, Tywin Lannister observes. He is a man of granite, his features rarely betraying emotion, but a flicker, almost imperceptible, crosses his face as he takes in the sight of his newest son. It is not the joy, the unbridled pride he felt upon the birth of his twins, Cersei and Jaime. This is something else, something complicated. The babe is small, fragile, but it is not merely his size that gives Tywin pause. His legs are strangely bowed, twisted. His head seems too large for his body, and his eyes, one is a startling emerald green, the other a muddy violet, as if two different people peer out from behind his infant face. He lifts the child gingerly, as if afraid it might break. He examines him with a clinical detachment, a dispassionate assessment of his flaws. He turns to Joanna, his voice a low rumble that barely carries across the room. "How is this, Joanna?" Despite her weariness, straightens in her bed. Her eyes, usually warm and gentle, flash with a protective fire. She sees the revulsion, the thinly veiled disgust in her husband's gaze. She knows what he is thinking. "He is our son, Tywin. Do not speak of him so." Tywin's jaw tightens. He is not used to being challenged, especially not by his wife. He had hoped for another golden lion, a son to inherit his strength, his cunning, his legacy. Instead, he has been given this. He searches for the right words, the words that will convey his disappointment without wounding Joanna too deeply. But the words fail him. He merely nods curtly, handing the child back to her. He is different. He is a Lannister. "Tywin, he is your son." Her voice cracks with the effort, but her conviction remains unwavering. She cradles the babe close, shielding him from Tywin's disapproving gaze. She sees not a monster, not a disappointment, but a child. Her child. Tywin turns away, his back rigid. He cannot bring himself to feign affection, to utter empty platitudes. He feels a profound unease, a sense of betrayal, as if the gods themselves have conspired against him, mocking his ambition, his unwavering belief in order and perfection. He is a Lannister. He will be raised as such. His words are clipped, devoid of warmth. He leaves the birthing chamber, the echo of his footsteps fading down the corridor. Joanna watches him go, her heart heavy with sorrow. She knows this will not be easy. Tywin is a man of unyielding pride, of unshakable conviction. To accept a son who deviates so drastically from his vision of perfection will be a challenge unlike any they have faced before. But Joanna is a Lannister too. She possesses a quiet strength, a subtle cunning that often goes unnoticed. She will not allow Tywin to cast aside their son. She will not allow him to treat him as a burden, a mistake. She will fight for him. She will nurture his strengths, protect him from his father's scorn, and ensure that he receives the love and respect he deserves. She looks down at the babe in her arms, his mismatched eyes blinking up at her. She sees not a dwarf, not a cripple, but a spark of intelligence, a glimmer of resilience. She whispers a promise, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire in the hearth. "You are a Lannister, little one, and you are loved. The days that follow are fraught with tension." Tywin keeps his distance, delegating the care of the newborn to the nurses and midwives. He avoids Joanna, avoids the uncomfortable questions that linger unspoken between them. He focuses on his duties as Lord of Casterly Rock, immersing himself in matters of state, in the administration of his lands. He trains Jaime in the art of warfare, drilling him relentlessly in swordplay and strategy. He grooms Cersei for a life of political maneuvering, teaching her the intricacies of courtly intrigue. But the unspoken presence of the babe, the constant reminder of his imperfection, gnaws at him. He finds himself restless, irritable. He snaps at his servants, dismisses his advisors, and isolates himself in his study, poring over maps and ledgers, seeking solace in the cold logic of numbers and boundaries. Joanna, meanwhile, dedicates herself to Tyrion, for that is the name she has chosen for him. She spends hours by his cradle, singing him lullabies, telling him stories of Lannister courage and cunning. She studies his face, searching for signs of his father's strength, his father's intelligence, and she finds them. Despite his physical deformities, Tyrion possesses a keen awareness, a sharp intelligence that belies his age. He observes the world around him with a quiet intensity, his mismatched eyes taking in every detail. He seems to absorb information. Like a sponge, his mind already working, analyzing, processing. Joanna sees in him a potential that Tywin refuses to acknowledge. She sees not a flawed imitation of his father, but a unique individual, capable of greatness in his own right. She begins to subtly influence his upbringing. Carefully selecting his nurses and tutors, she chooses individuals who will foster his intellect, who will encourage his curiosity, who will see past his physical limitations. She also recognizes the importance of shielding him from the cruelties of the world. She knows that he will face prejudice and scorn, that he will be judged for his appearance, not his character. She seeks to fortify his spirit, to instill in him a sense of self-worth that will withstand the inevitable onslaught of ridicule. One evening, as Tywin sits alone in his study, Joanna enters, her face etched with determination. She has decided that the time has come to confront him, to force him to acknowledge the truth about their son. "Tywin, we must speak." He looks up, his expression guarded. He knows what is coming. He has been avoiding this conversation for weeks about Tyrion. He says nothing, but his silence is an invitation to continue. "He is our son, Tywin. He deserves your love, your guidance. I provide for him. He lacks nothing. You provide for him, materially, but you withhold your affection, your respect. You treat him as a burden, a disgrace." Tywin rises from his chair, his voice rising in response. He can't even understand how she can talk to him about this. It is as if she knows his fears and wants to rub them in his face. "He is different, Joanna. He is not the son I expected. And is that his fault? Did he choose to be born this way?" Tywin turns away, pacing the room restlessly. He cannot articulate his feelings, his anxieties. He knows that his reaction is irrational, unfair, but he cannot help it. He is a man of tradition, of unwavering belief in the importance of lineage and appearance. Tyrion is a threat to that belief, a challenge to his very identity. He stops, pacing, turning back to Joanna. His voice is softer now, laced with a hint of desperation. "I do not know how to raise him, Joanna. I do not know how to make him a Lannister." Joanna steps forward, placing a hand on his arm. Her touch is gentle, reassuring. You raise him with love, Tywin. You teach him to be strong, to be honorable, to be just. You show him what it means to be a Lannister, and he will become one in his own way. Tywin looks at her, his eyes searching. Her face, he sees her unwavering belief, her unwavering love for their son. He sees a strength that rivals his own. He sighs, the tension draining from his shoulders. He knows that she is right. He cannot continue to deny Tyrion, to cast him aside. He must find a way to accept him, to guide him, to mold him into the best possible version of himself. Very well, Joanna. I will try. Joanna smiles, her face radiant with relief. That is all I ask. The process is slow, arduous. Tywin struggles to overcome his initial revulsion, his ingrained prejudices. He begins to spend more time with Tyrion, observing him, studying him. He is surprised by what he finds. Despite his physical limitations, Tyrion possesses a sharp wit, a keen intellect. He is an avid reader, devouring books on history, philosophy, and strategy. He asks insightful questions, challenging Tywin's assumptions, forcing him to think critically. Tywin begins to recognize that Tyrion's intelligence is not merely a compensation for his physical flaws. It is a gift, a strength that could be even more valuable than brute force or physical prowess. He begins to involve Tyrion in his daily activities, discussing matters of state, seeking his opinion on various issues. He is surprised by the depth of his understanding, by his ability to see through the complexities of a situation, to identify the underlying motives of others. He also begins to appreciate Tyrion's resilience, his ability to withstand the taunts and jeers of others. He witnesses the quiet dignity with which he carries himself, the unwavering self-confidence that radiates from within. Slowly, grudgingly, Tywin begins to accept Tyrion not as the son he had hoped for, but as the son he has. He begins to see past his physical deformities, to recognize his intellectual gifts, his unwavering spirit. He begins to love him. The change in Tywin is not dramatic, not overt. He is not a man prone to public displays of affection, but his actions speak volumes. He defends Tyrion from the cruelties of others. He encourages his intellectual pursuits. He grooms him for a life of service, preparing him to be a valuable asset to House Lannister. Cersei and Jaime, however, resent the attention that Tyrion receives. They see him as a threat to their own positions, a rival for their father's affection. They taunt him, ridicule him, and seek to undermine him at every turn. But Joanna will not allow it. She fiercely defends Tyrion, reminding Cersei and Jaime of their duty to their brother, of the importance of family loyalty. She uses her influence to protect him from their machinations, to ensure that he receives the same opportunities as his siblings. Despite the challenges, Tyrion thrives under Joanna's care. He grows into a confident, intelligent young man, secure in the knowledge that he is loved and valued. He embraces his differences, using his wit and charm to disarm his detractors, to win the respect of others. He becomes a master of strategy, a skilled negotiator, and a keen observer of human nature. He learns to navigate the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue, to manipulate events to his own advantage. He becomes, in his own way, a true Lannister, lion among wolves, a force to be reckoned with. And Joanna, watching him from afar, knows that she has succeeded. She has saved her son from the depths of despair, and she has given him the tools he needs to thrive. Let's delve into how Joanna's influence fundamentally alters Tyrion's path, shaping him into a formidable force in West. Joanna Lannister, having survived the ordeal of Tyrion's birth, remains a constant presence in his life. However, the circumstances surrounding his birth and his physical deformities cast a long shadow over his relationship with Tywin. A man obsessed with legacy and appearances struggles to reconcile his disappointment in Tyrion with his duty as a father. He views Tyrion's dwarfism as a personal failing, a mark of weakness that tarnishes the Lannister name. This tension creates a rift between Tywin and Tyrion, a chasm that Joanna actively seeks to bridge. She sees beyond Tyrion's physical limitations, recognizing the sharp intellect and keen wit that lie beneath the surface. She understands that Tyrion possesses a strategic mind that could rival even Tywin's own. Moreover, Joanna foresees that Tyrion's intelligence represents the surest path of ensuring House Lannister's future. Unlike Cersei, who sees Tyrion as a constant reminder of their mother's death and a threat to her own ambitions. Or Jaime, who, while affectionate towards Tyrion, is often preoccupied with his own pursuits. Joanna recognizes Tyrion's potential and actively champions his cause. Joanna understands that Tywin, despite his outward disdain, still harbors a flicker of paternal affection for Tyrion, however deeply buried it may be. She leverages this affection, using her influence as Tywin's wife to manipulate him into taking a more active role in Tyrion's upbringing. The catalyst for this change is a carefully orchestrated conversation. Joanna, after observing Tyrion devouring books on history and politics with an insatiable hunger, approaches Tywin with a proposition. "Tywin," she begins, her voice calm but firm, "you spend countless hours grooming Jaime to be your heir, yet he shows little interest in the intricacies of governance. Cersei is equally ill-suited for the task, blinded by her own ambition and vanity. You act as though only physical perfection can be considered a virtue, but you are wrong." Tywin raises an eyebrow, his gaze unwavering. "Are you suggesting that Tyrion should be considered as my heir? The suggestion is absurd. Not as your heir, not in the traditional sense," Joanna clarifies. "But Tyrion possesses a mind that rivals your own. He sees patterns and connections that others miss. He understands the nuances of power and politics in a way that Jaime and Cersei never will." Tywin scoffs. "A dwarf cannot rule. He would be a laughingstock, but he can advise," Joanna counters. "He can strategize. He can be your most valuable asset, a weapon forged in the fires of adversity." Joanna then strikes at Tywin's core desire, legacy. "You strive to build a dynasty, Tywin, but a dynasty is built not just on strength and gold, but on wisdom and cunning. Are you really going to squander Tyrion's potential simply because of his appearance?" Tywin remains silent, considering her words. He is a man who prides himself on his pragmatism, and Joanna's argument, however unconventional, holds a certain logic. He has long been frustrated by Jaime's lack of political acumen and Cersei's impulsiveness. The prospect of molding Tyrion into a shrewd advisor, a master of intrigue, is undeniably appealing. "What do you propose?" he finally asks, his voice betraying a hint of curiosity. "That you take an active role in his education," Joanna replies. "Not just the rote lessons of a maester, but a true apprenticeship in the art of governance. Share your knowledge, your experience, your insights. Mold him into the man he has the potential to be." Joanna continues to press, emphasizing that Tyrion's sharp mind and unconventional perspective could be invaluable to House Lannister. She argues that by personally educating Tyrion, Tywin could not only nurture his talents but also gain a loyal and capable advisor, a shadow hand to guide the Lannister destiny. Joanna's persuasiveness, coupled with Tywin's growing disillusionment with Jaime and Cersei, ultimately prevails. He agrees to take Tyrion under his wing, albeit with certain reservations. This decision marks a turning point in Tyrion's life. The lessons begin, and they are unlike anything Tyrion has ever experienced. Tywin discards the traditional curriculum, focusing instead on practical knowledge and strategic thinking. He teaches Tyrion about the history of Westeros, not as a mere recitation of dates and battles, but as a study of power dynamics and political maneuvering. Tywin shows Tyrion the intricacies of managing vast wealth, the importance of fostering alliances, and the necessity of ruthlessness in achieving one's goals. He shares his own experiences as Hand of the King, dissecting the decisions he made, the challenges he faced, and the mistakes he learned from. These lessons are not delivered with warmth or affection. Tywin remains a stern and demanding teacher, constantly challenging Tyrion, pushing him to think critically and to defend his positions with logic and evidence. He tolerates no sentimentality, no weakness. He drills into Tyrion that power is a game, and only those who are willing to play it without scruples can truly succeed. Despite the harshness of Tywin's methods, Tyrion thrives under his tutelage. He possesses an insatiable thirst for knowledge and a natural aptitude for strategy. He absorbs everything Tywin teaches him, analyzing it, questioning it, and ultimately integrating it into his own understanding of the world. He learns to see the world as Tywin sees it, a complex web of alliances, betrayals, and power struggles. Unlike Jaime, who often struggles to grasp the nuances of politics, Tyrion excels in this arena. He is able to anticipate his opponents' moves, to identify their weaknesses, and to exploit them with ruthless efficiency. He develops a keen understanding of human nature, recognizing the motivations and desires that drive people's actions. As Tyrion's knowledge and skills grow, so does his confidence. He begins to challenge Tywin's assumptions, to offer alternative strategies, and even to point out his father's mistakes. Tywin, initially resistant to such challenges, gradually comes to respect Tyrion's intellect and his ability to think outside the box. While Tywin's education focuses primarily on politics and strategy, Joanna ensures that Tyrion also receives a broader education, one that encompasses literature, philosophy, and the arts. She recognizes that a true leader must be well-rounded, capable of understanding and appreciating different perspectives. Joanna also instills in Tyrion a strong sense of morality, a quality that is often lacking in Tywin's teachings. She emphasizes the importance of justice, compassion, and empathy, reminding Tyrion that power should be used not only for personal gain, but also for the benefit of others. This dual education, shaped by both Tywin's pragmatism and Joanna's compassion, forges Tyrion into a complex and multifaceted character. He is a shrewd strategist, a cunning politician, and a skilled manipulator, but he is also a man of wit, intelligence, and a surprising capacity for empathy. This unconventional education doesn't go unnoticed. Cersei, consumed by jealousy and resentment, views Tyrion's growing influence with increasing alarm. She sees him as a threat to her own ambitions, a rival for Tywin's favor, and a potential obstacle to her ascent to power. Cersei actively undermines Tyrion at every turn, spreading rumors about his deformities, questioning his abilities, and attempting to poison Tywin's mind against him. She sees Tyrion's rise as a personal insult, a validation of everything she despises about him. Jaime, on the other hand, is relieved by Tyrion's newfound prominence. He has always felt burdened by the expectation of succeeding Tywin as Lord of Casterly Rock, a role for which he feels ill-suited. Tyrion's emergence as a capable and ambitious figure allows Jaime to pursue his own passions, free from the pressure of family expectations. Jaime, however, does feel sympathy for the way Tyrion is treated by his father. He has witnessed firsthand Tywin's harshness and his relentless demands, and he recognizes that Tyrion is under constant pressure to prove himself. The contrast between Cersei's resentment and Jaime's relief highlights the complex dynamics within the Lannister family. Tyrion's unconventional education, while ultimately beneficial to him, further exacerbates the existing tensions and rivalries, setting the stage for future conflicts. Despite the animosity from Cersei and the strained relationship with Tywin, Tyrion flourishes under his father's tutelage. He hones his mind, refines his skills, and develops a keen understanding of the Game of Thrones. He becomes a force to be reckoned with, a Lannister who is not to be underestimated. This unconventional education, orchestrated by Joanna and reluctantly implemented by Tywin, transforms Tyrion from a ridiculed dwarf into a formidable strategist and a shrewd political player. It sets him on a path that will lead him to challenge the established order, to defy expectations, and to ultimately leave an indelible mark on the history of Westeros. But that is a story for another video. Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, the man who shat gold, the hand that saved King's Landing once before, found himself in a decidedly un-Lannister-like position, waiting. Robert's rebellion raged across the Seven Kingdoms like a wildfire, consuming houses and loyalties with indiscriminate hunger. The Starks in the north, the Arryns in the Vale, the Tullys in the Riverlands, and the Baratheons in the Stormlands, all united against the Mad King Aerys and Tywin. He sat perched atop his golden rock, a spider at the center of his web, meticulously observing the unfolding chaos. For a lesser man, the decision would have been agonizing. To side with the Targaryens meant potentially backing a losing cause, risking everything House Lannister had built. But to side with the rebels meant turning against the crown, against the very institution that had elevated his family to power. Tywin, however, did not agonize. He calculated, he weighed the odds. He waited for the scales to tip decisively. His neutrality drew criticism, of course. Whispers traveled from King's Landing, laced with Aerys's paranoia and distrust. The Mad King, ever the master of burning bridges, suspected treachery, saw Lannister ambition lurking behind every carefully worded message of support. Robert Baratheon, on the other hand, viewed Tywin's inaction as a calculated insult, a refusal to commit to the cause of justice, but Tywin remained unmoved, impervious to both threats and entreaties. He would not commit until he was certain of victory, and victory in the Game of Thrones was a fickle mistress. Then came the Battle of the Trident. The clash of steel on the trident marked a shift. The reports arrived at Casterly Rock, grim and decisive. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, the last hope of the dynasty, lay dead in the river, struck down by Robert Baratheon's warhammer. The rebel army, though bloodied, stood victorious. The scales, at long last, began to tip. Even now, Tywin did not rush to action. He studied the reports, analyzed the troop movements, assessed the strength of the rebel forces. He consulted with his advisors, listened to their counsel, but ultimately the decision rested with him and with Joanna. Joanna Lannister was in many ways Tywin's opposite, and yet she was his most trusted confidant, the only person whose opinion he truly valued. Where Tywin was cold and calculating, Joanna was warm and compassionate. Where Tywin saw only power and ambition, Joanna saw humanity and potential. Their marriage was an unusual one, a partnership forged not only on political expediency but also on mutual respect and affection. As the news from the Trident reverberated through Casterly Rock, Tywin sought Joanna's counsel. He found her in the gardens, tending to her roses, her hands stained with earth. "The Trident," he said, his voice low, devoid of emotion. "Rager is dead. Robert has won." Joanna looked up, her eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored the somber news. "Then the time for neutrality is over," she replied, her voice soft but firm. Tywin nodded. "Indeed, I intend to march on King's Landing." Joanna paused, carefully pruning a thorny stem. "And what is your intention once you reach the capital, my lord?" Tywin's eyes narrowed. "To offer our services to the victor, to secure our place in the new order." "And which victor do you envision, Tywin?" Joanna asked, her gaze unwavering. "Robert, who despises us for our perceived inaction, or Aerys, who suspects us of treachery?" "We will offer our services to the one who promises the most favorable terms," Tywin replied, his voice steely. "We will play them against each other, securing the best possible outcome for House Lannister." Joanna straightened, setting aside her pruning shears. "And what of justice, Tywin? What of the innocent lives caught in this conflict?" Expression hardened. "Justice is a luxury we cannot afford. We must prioritize the survival of our house. Survival at any cost." Joanna challenged, her voice tinged with disapproval. "Even if it means sacrificing our honor. Even if it means staining our hands with the blood of innocents." Tywin remained silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He knew what Joanna was asking. She was asking him to consider the moral implications of his actions, to weigh the value of human life against the pursuit of power. It was a question he had long dismissed as irrelevant, a weakness to be exploited. But Joanna's voice, her presence, forced him to confront it, to acknowledge the nagging doubt that gnawed at the edges of his ambition. "Aerys is mad," Joanna continued, her voice rising with passion. "He has alienated his own people, turned against his most loyal supporters. He is a danger to himself, to his family, and to the realm." "But Robert," she paused, her gaze softening. "Robert is a good man, a just man. He may be flawed, impulsive, but he has a strong sense of honor. He will not forget those who stood by him, nor will he forgive those who betrayed him." "And you believe we should cast our lot with Robert?" Tywin asked, his voice skeptical. "I believe we should intervene," Joanna replied, her eyes blazing with conviction, "but not as mere opportunists, seeking only to profit from the chaos. We should intervene as agents of justice, as protectors of the innocent." Tywin frowned. "And how do you propose we do that?" "We will secure King's Landing," Joanna said, her voice resolute. "We will prevent further bloodshed. We will ensure that the transition of power is as smooth and peaceful as possible." Tywin considered her words, his mind racing through the possible scenarios. Securing King's Landing would be a bold move, a gamble with potentially devastating consequences. But it would also be a decisive stroke, a demonstration of Lannister power that could not be ignored. "And what of Aerys?" he asked, his voice still guarded. "Aerys must be removed from power," Joanna replied, her voice firm. "But his family, his wife, his children, they must be spared." Tywin's eyes narrowed. "You ask me to show mercy too? The Targaryens, after all they have done to us. I ask you to show humanity, Joanna replied, her voice pleading, to rise above the petty grievances and personal vendettas that have consumed this realm for far too long. Tywin remained silent, his mind locked in a fierce internal struggle. He knew that Joanna's proposal was fraught with risk. To spare the Targaryens would be seen as a sign of weakness, a betrayal of the rebel cause. It would invite suspicion, distrust, and potentially even open rebellion. But he also knew that Joanna was right. Aerys was mad, his reign built on fear and oppression. To continue supporting him would be to perpetuate the cycle of violence and injustice that had plagued the Seven Kingdoms for generations. And Robert was a good man, a just man. But he was also a warrior, a man of action, not a politician. He would need allies, advisors, to help him navigate the treacherous currents of courtly intrigue. And who better than House Lannister, with its wealth, its power, and its strategic acumen? Tywin looked at Joanna, her eyes filled with hope and determination. He saw in her not only his wife, but also his conscience, the voice of reason that tempered his ambition and reminded him of the true meaning of power. "Very well," he said at last, his voice resigned but firm. "We will secure King's Landing. We will remove Aerys from power, but we will spare his family. We will offer them our protection." Joanna smiled, her face radiant with relief. "Thank you, Tywin," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have made the right decision." And so, Tywin Lannister, the Lord of Casterly Rock, the man who shat gold, made his choice. He would intervene in Robert's rebellion, not as a mere opportunist, but as an agent of justice, as a protector of the innocent. He would secure King's Landing, remove Aerys from power, and spare his family. It was a gamble, a risk with potentially devastating consequences. But it was a gamble he was willing to take, for the sake of his honor, for the sake of his family, and for the sake of the woman he loved. The Lannister army marched on King's Landing, a golden tide sweeping across the countryside. As they approached the capital, Tywin sent a message to Grand Maester Pycelle, a man known for his pragmatism and his willingness to serve whoever held power. He instructed Pycelle to open the gates of the city, promising him protection and reward for his cooperation. Pycelle, ever the opportunist, readily agreed. He saw the writing on the wall, recognized that the Targaryen dynasty was crumbling. He opened the gates of King's Landing, allowing the Lannister army to flood into the city. The sack of King's Landing was brutal and bloody. The Lannister soldiers, eager to prove their loyalty and reap the rewards of victory, unleashed a wave of violence and destruction upon the city. They looted, raped, and murdered, indiscriminately targeting Targaryen loyalists and innocent civilians alike. Tywin watched the carnage unfold from his command tent, his face impassive. He knew that such atrocities were inevitable in war and necessary. Evil to secure the city and break the will of the defenders. But Joanna would not stand for it. As the reports of the sack reached her ears, Joanna was horrified. She could not believe that Tywin, her Tywin, would allow such barbarity to occur. She stormed into his command tent, her eyes blazing with fury. "What is happening out there, Tywin?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "Your soldiers are running wild. They are slaughtering innocent people. Is this your idea of justice?" Tywin remained seated, his face expressionless. "War is a messy business, Joanna," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Such things are unavoidable." "Unavoidable," Joanna scoffed. "You could stop it if you wanted to. You are the commander of this army. You have the power to control your men. and risk losing control of the city, Tywin retorted. I will not jeopardize our victory for the sake of a few sentimentalities. Sentimentalities? Joanna repeated, her voice incredulous. Are you calling human life sentimentalities? These are not just numbers, Tywin. These are people, with families, with dreams, with lives. They deserve our protection, not our brutality. Tywin sighed, rising from his seat. Joanna, you do not understand the realities of power. We are at war. We must do whatever is necessary to secure our position. And what position is that, Tywin? Joanna challenged, her voice filled with scorn. To be known as the butchers of King's Landing. To be reviled and hated by all who value honor and decency. Tywin remained silent, his gaze fixed on the ground. He knew that Joanna was right. The sack of King's Landing would tarnish the Lannister name, stain their reputation for generations to come. But he also knew that he could not afford to show weakness, to appear soft or indecisive. He had to maintain control, to demonstrate his authority, even if it meant sacrificing his own conscience. I will not allow this to continue, Joanna declared, her voice resolute. I will not stand by and watch as innocent people are slaughtered in the name of Lannister ambition. Tywin looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and admiration. He knew that she meant what she said. Joanna was not a woman to be trifled with. She had a strength and a conviction that rivaled his own. What do you propose I do? He asked, his voice resigned. You will issue new orders, Joanna replied, her voice firm. You will order your men to cease the looting and the violence. You will promise protection to all who surrender, and you will punish those who disobey. Tywin hesitated, weighing the risks and the benefits. He knew that such orders would be difficult to enforce, that many of his soldiers would resent being denied the spoils of war. But he also knew that Joanna was right. The sack of King's Landing had gone on long enough. It was time to restore order, to demonstrate that House Lannister was not merely a force of destruction, but also a force of justice. Very well, he said at last, his voice resigned but firm. I will issue the orders. Joanna smiled, her face radiant with relief. Thank you, Tywin, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. You have made the right decision. Tywin issued the new orders, and the violence in King's Landing began to subside. The looting and the raping ceased, and the Lannister soldiers began to restore order to the city. But the damage had already been done. The sack of King's Landing would forever be remembered as a black mark on the Lannister name, a stain on their honor that could never be completely erased. And then came the order regarding the Targaryen children. Aerys was dead, slain by Jaime Lannister. The throne was open. Robert was on his way, and Ilya Martell and her children, Rhaenys and Aegon, were in the Red Keep under Lannister protection. Tywin had initially intended to secure them, to hold them as hostages, as bargaining chips in the negotiations with Robert. But Joanna had other ideas. They are children, Tywin, she said, her voice pleading. They are innocent. They deserve to live. Tywin hesitated. He knew that killing the Targaryen children would be a ruthless but pragmatic move, eliminating any potential threat to the new regime. But he also knew that it would be a monstrous act, a betrayal of everything he had promised Joanna. He had already compromised on so much. He had allowed Joanna to sway his decision to intervene in the rebellion. He had allowed her to temper his ambition, to guide his actions. He had even allowed her to mitigate the worst excesses of the sack of King's Landing. But this was different. This was a decision that would define him, that would determine his legacy. To kill the Targaryen children would be to embrace the darkness, to become the monster that his enemies accused him of being. He looked at Joanna, her eyes filled with hope and fear. He saw in her not only his wife, but also his soul, the last vestige of humanity that he had managed to preserve in the ruthless world of politics and power. "Very well," he said at last, his voice resigned but firm. "I will spare the children," but he would not leave it to chance. He knew that some of his soldiers, particularly Gregor Clegane the Mountain, would not hesitate to carry out the deed. If given the opportunity, he had to ensure that the children were protected, that they were kept safe from harm. He summoned Gregor Clegane to his command tent, his face grim. "You will secure Ilia Martell and her children," he ordered, his voice steely. "You will bring them to me, unharmed." Gregor Clegane, a man of immense size and brutal strength, nodded his head in obedience. He did not question the order. He simply turned and left the tent, his eyes glinting with anticipation. But Tywin had no intention of allowing Gregor Clegane to carry out the order as it was written. He sent another messenger, Seer Adam Marbrand, one of his most trusted knights, to intercept Clegane and deliver a new set of instructions. "You will ensure that Ilia Martell and her children are taken to safety," he instructed Marbrand, his voice low and urgent. "You will escort them to a secure location where they will be protected from harm, and you will do everything in your power to prevent Gregor Clegane from laying a hand on them." Sir Ajado Markbrun, a man of honor and courage, readily agreed. He understood the importance of the mission, recognized that the lives of the Targaryen children hung in the balance. He set off in pursuit of Gregor Clegane, determined to carry out his lord's orders to the letter. And so, while Gregor Clegane rampaged through the Red Keep, searching for Ilia Martell and her children, Seer Adam Marbrand raced to intercept him, to protect the Targaryens from the Mountain's wrath. The fate of the Targaryen children and the future of the Seven Kingdoms hung in the balance. Seer Adam intercepted Gregor just as he found Ilia and her children. Marbrand's knights engaged the Mountain and his men as Marbrand grabbed Ilia and whisked her and her children away to a hidden passage, one only known to Tywin himself. Ilia and the children would be kept safe. The Lannisters had secured kings, landing and avoided one terrible stain. The tide had turned, indeed. Joanna's counsel, while invaluable, couldn't entirely erase the realities facing Westeros. Robert Baratheon, victorious but volatile, now sat upon a throne forged from rebellion and bloodshed. The realm yearned for stability, but the stench of Targaryen blood still lingered in the air, a potent reminder of the madness they'd narrowly escaped. And Robert, for all his strength, was icily swayed. The whispers started almost immediately. The Targaryen whelps must be extinguished. They are a threat to the new regime. Every dragon seed must be rooted out. Robert, fueled by wine and haunted by the ghost of Lyanna, listened. Joanna, however, saw a different path. A path not of destruction, but of calculated control. She recognized that extinguishing the Targaryen line entirely would only create more unrest, more martyrs, more fuel for future rebellions. The Dornish, fiercely loyal to Ilia Martell and her children, would never truly accept Robert's rule if they were murdered. It was a dangerous gamble, one that could destabilize the entire kingdom. So, Joanna took a risk. She approached Robert, not as a supplicant, but as a shrewd negotiator. She found him in the small council chambers, surrounded by advisors clamoring for the children's heads. "Robert," she began, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the noise. These children, Aegon and Rhaenys, represent more than just a Targaryen claim. They are symbols, hostages, and their deaths would be a mistake. Robert, already red-faced and agitated, rounded on her. Mistake, they're dragons born, they're snakes in the grass, waiting to strike. And what of Dawn? Joanna countered. Do you believe they will quietly accept the slaughter of their princess's children? You risk igniting another war, Robert. A war you cannot afford. Robert paused, the anger momentarily receding, replaced by a flicker of doubt. He knew. Joanna spoke the truth. Dawn was a prickly thorn in the side of the Seven Kingdoms, a region that had never truly bent the knee. A war with Dawn would be a costly and protracted affair. Then what do you propose? Robert growled. We let them live, let them plot and scheme, waiting for their chance to reclaim the Iron Throne. Joanna smiled, a subtle, almost predatory expression that sent a shiver down the spines of those present. Not at all, Your Grace. We control them. We neutralize the threat. Strategically, she outlined her plan, a daring and complex scheme that would secure the Lannisters' future while simultaneously pacifying the realm. A marriage pact. Cersei will marry you, Robert, Joanna declared. An alliance between the lion and the stag, a symbol of unity and strength. But that is not all. Robert looked at her with narrowed eyes, suspicion etched on his face. There's more, isn't there? Rhaenys Targaryen, Joanna continued, will be fostered in Winterfell. Under the watchful eye of Eddard Stark, his honor is beyond reproach. He will ensure she poses no threat. She will learn the ways of the North, far from the intrigues of King's Landing. Robert grunted. And Aegon? Aegon, Joanna said, her voice taking on a subtle edge, will be fostered in the Westerlands, under our care. He will learn to be a Lannister. He will be raised in the image of strength and loyalty. We will ensure he understands that his future lies not in reclaiming the Iron Throne, but in serving the realm. Aegon, a Lannister ward. It was a bold move, a blatant power play, but Robert, caught between the need for stability and his own burning hatred for the Targaryens, found himself intrigued. And what of the Targaryen claim? Robert questioned. These children still have Targaryen blood in their veins. The marriage pact will secure your line, Robert. Your children will be the rightful heirs to the Iron Throne. And with the Targaryen children fostered far from King's Landing, their claim will become diluted, forgotten. They will become distant relatives, not immediate threats. Joanna's plan was audacious, almost Machiavellian in its complexity. She was playing a long game, securing the Lannisters' influence, while simultaneously preventing another war. But beneath the surface of her grand strategy, a darker current flowed. She knew Cersei. She knew her ambition, her ruthlessness, her proclivities. Marrying Cersei to Robert was a calculated risk, a gamble with potentially disastrous consequences. Joanna understood the incestuous tension simmering between Cersei and Jaime, a dangerous flame that threatened to consume everything in its path. She had witnessed it firsthand, the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the unspoken desires that burned beneath the surface. Sending Jaime to the King's Guard had been a desperate attempt to separate them, to extinguish the flame before it spiraled out of control, but it had failed. The distance only seemed to fuel their forbidden passion, and now Joanna was deliberately placing Cersei in a position of power, a position that would only amplify her desires and her capacity for destruction. It was a dangerous game, but one she felt compelled to play. The alternative, a war with Dawn, the execution of innocent children. The potential collapse of the realm was simply too great. She knew the risks. She knew that Cersei and Jaime's incestuous relationship could shatter the alliance, plunge the kingdom into chaos. But she also believed she could control them. She believed she could manipulate them, use them as pawns. In her grand design, it was a dangerous gamble, a dance on the edge of a knife. Robert, still wrestling with the implications of Joanna's plan, turned to his advisors. Jon Arryn, his wise and trusted hand, nodded slowly. "It is a pragmatic solution, Your Grace. It avoids bloodshed and secures the realm." Stannis Baratheon, ever the pragmatist, grunted in agreement. "It is better than the alternative." Even Eddard Stark, his face etched with reservations, conceded the necessity of the plan. "It is not ideal, Your Grace, but it may be the only way to ensure lasting peace." Robert, swayed by the counsel of his advisors, finally relented. "Very well," he declared, his voice heavy with resignation. "We will do it your way, Joanna. But if these Targaryen whelps cause me any trouble, I will not hesitate to correct my mistake." Joanna inclined her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "They will not, Your Grace, I assure you." The pact was sealed. Cersei would marry Robert. Rhaenys would be fostered in Winterfell. Aegon would be raised in the Westerlands. And the realm, for now, would have its peace. But Joanna knew that this peace was fragile, a house of cards built on secrets and lies. The incestuous tension between Cersei and Jaime remained a ticking time bomb, a threat that could erupt at any moment. And the fate of the realm rested on her ability to control it. As the wedding preparations began, Joanna summoned Cersei to her chambers. Cersei arrived, radiating resentment and barely concealing her disdain. "You have what you wanted, Mother." Cersei spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You secured the alliance. You married me off to the usurper." "I secured the realm, Cersei," Joanna corrected, her voice cold and sharp. "And you will play your part. You will be Robert's queen. You will produce heirs to the Iron Throne. And you will do it without causing any unnecessary complications." Cersei scoffed. "And what if I refuse?" "You will not," Joanna said, her eyes locking onto Cersei's, "because you understand the consequences. You understand that if your indiscretions are revealed, not only will you be disgraced, but the entire Lannister family will fall with you." Cersei's face paled, the bravado momentarily crumbling. She knew her mother spoke the truth. Her relationship with Jaime was a dangerous secret, one that could destroy everything she held dear. "You underestimate me, Mother," Cersei hissed. "On the contrary, Cersei, I know you better than you know yourself. I know your ambition, your desires, your weaknesses, and I know how to control them." Joanna leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You will be Robert's queen. You will produce heirs, and you will keep your brother at arm's length, or you will face consequences you cannot even imagine." The message was clear. Joanna was watching. She was always watching. And she would not hesitate to protect her family, even if it meant sacrificing her own daughter. As Cersei stormed out of the room, Joanna sighed. She had bought herself some time, but she knew that the battle was far from over. Cersei was a force of nature, a whirlwind of ambition and desire, and controlling her would be the greatest challenge of Joanna's life. Meanwhile, in the Westerlands, Aegon Targaryen began his new life as a Lannister ward. He was a quiet, observant boy, still grieving the loss of his family and his birthright. Joanna, however, saw potential in him. she saw a spark of intelligence, a flicker of ambition. She took him under her wing, educating him in the ways of the Westerlands, teaching him about strategy, politics, and the importance of loyalty. She showed him the grandeur of Casterly Rock, the wealth and power of House Lannister. She also made it clear that his future lay not in reclaiming the Iron Throne, but in serving the realm. She instilled in him a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility, and slowly Aegon began to accept his new life. He learned to admire Tywin Lannister's strength and cunning. He learned to respect Tyrion's intelligence and wit. He even formed a grudging friendship with Jaime, who, despite his vows, treated Aegon with a certain degree of kindness and understanding. But Joanna never forgot the danger Aegon represented. She knew that the Targaryen blood still flowed in his veins, that the desire for the Iron Throne could one day resurface. So, she kept him close, always watching, always guiding, always ensuring that he remained loyal to the Lannisters. In Winterfell, Rhaenys Targaryen adapted to the harsh climate and the stoic nature of the Northmen. Eddard Stark treated her with respect and kindness, but he never forgot that she was a Targaryen, potential threat to the realm. Rhaenys, however, seemed content with her new life. She learned to ride, to hunt, to endure the cold. She formed a close bond with Eddard's children, particularly Arya, who shared her rebellious spirit and her love of adventure. But even in the remote north, the whispers of King's Landing reached Rhaenys' ears. She heard stories of Robert's excesses, of Cersei's cruelty, of the growing tensions in the royal court, and she began to wonder about her place in the world, about the destiny that had been stolen from her. The marriage pact, the fostering of the Targaryen children. It was a gamble, a dangerous game of power and control. And Joanna Lannister, the architect of this grand strategy, knew that the stakes were higher than ever. The fate of the realm hung in the balance, and the future of Westeros rested on her ability to navigate the treacherous currents of ambition, desire, and betrayal. And, of course, Cersei's incestuous desire for her twin. The marriage of Robert and Cersei was, to put it mildly, a political expedient, a gilded cage built on resentment and the ghosts of loves lost. We all know the story of Robert's obsession with Lyanna Stark, a shadow that loomed large over every moment of his marriage to Cersei. But what if, amidst all that, a genuine affection actually bloomed? What if Cersei had managed to produce a true-born Baratheon heir, not a son, but a daughter named Bara? This isn't to say the incestuous relationship between Cersei and Jaime simply vanishes. No, their twisted bond remains a dark undercurrent, a secret flame that Cersei desperately tries to conceal even as it consumes her. She bears Jaime's children. In secret, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, passing them off as Roberts. Each birth a dangerous gamble that could shatter the already fragile peace. Robert, blissfully unaware of the true parentage of Cersei's younger children, dotes on Bera. He sees in her a reflection of Lyanna's spirited nature, a warrior princess who prefers swords to silks and riding to embroidery. He indulges her, every whim showering her with affection and training, turning a blind eye to Cersei's barely concealed resentment. He gives her a custom-forged warhammer and proudly proclaims her to be his little stag, further fueling Cersei's jealousy. The Lannister Baratheon court, a viper's nest of ambition and intrigue, becomes even more treacherous. Cersei, obsessed with securing the throne for her children, sows discord and whispers poison into the ears of those who would listen. She knows that even with Robert's favor, Bara, as a woman, faces an uphill battle for succession. The whispers of tradition, of male primogeniture, are her weapons of choice. Meanwhile, the truth about Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen festers like an open wound. Suspicion begins to gnaw at the edges of the court. Stannis Baratheon, ever the stickler for law and order, grows increasingly uneasy with the golden hair. Children who bear no resemblance to Robert. Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, a man of deep honor and keen observation, begins to investigate the matter, poring over family histories and scrutinizing the children's features. He visits Robert's bastards throughout King's Landing, meticulously noting the dark hair that is a hallmark of the Baratheon line. His pursuit of the truth places him on a collision course with Cersei, who will stop at nothing to protect her secret. As Jon Arryn delves deeper, he shares his concerns with Stannis and Renly, Robert's brothers. Initially skeptical, they too begin to see the glaring discrepancies. They realize that if Joffrey isn't Robert's son, then the Baratheon claim to the Iron Throne rests solely on Bera's shoulders. Renly, ever charming and politically astute, recognizes the potential advantage of supporting Bara, seeing her as a more pliable ruler than the ruthless Cersei. He starts subtly swaying Robert, praising Bara's strength and courage, subtly planting seeds of doubt about Joffrey's suitability. The tension in King's Landing becomes almost unbearable. The Lannisters, sensing the shift in the wind, begin to maneuver for position. Tywin Lannister, ever the pragmatist, assesses the situation and realizes that a succession crisis could plunge the realm into chaos. He understands that a stable Westeros, even under a Baratheon queen, is preferable to a fractured one. Joanna Lannister, ever the shrewd negotiator, recognizes the danger posed by Cersei's ambition and the growing suspicions surrounding her children. She discreetly reaches out to Jon Arryn, offering the support of House Lannister to secure Bara's claim. She provides him with evidence, carefully curated and presented, to solidify his suspicions about Joffrey's parentage. This alliance, born of necessity and self-preservation, sets the stage for a dramatic confrontation. Before Jon Arryn can fully expose Cersei's secret, he is poisoned. The deed is swift and subtle, leaving no trace. His death throws the court into turmoil, and Robert, grief-stricken and paranoid, spirals into a drunken depression. He becomes increasingly erratic, lashing out at those closest to him, including Bara Cersei, seizing the opportunity, further isolates Robert from his brothers, poisoning his mind against them. With Robert incapacitated and the realm teetering on the brink of chaos, Cersei makes her move. She orchestrates Robert's death, ensuring that Joffrey is declared his heir. However, her carefully laid plans are disrupted by a series of unexpected events as Joffrey is proclaimed king in King's Landing. Bara, under the guidance of Tywin Lannister and with the backing of the Stormlands, the Dornish, and a portion of the Vale, rejects his claim and declares herself queen. She asserts that Robert had named her his heir on his deathbed, conveniently ignoring the fact that he was in a drunken stupor at the time. News of Robert's death and the conflicting claims to the throne sends shockwaves across Westeros. The realm fractures into warring factions. The Targaryens, long thought extinct, seize the opportunity to reclaim their birthright. Viserys Targaryen, accompanied by a horde of Dothraki warriors, lands in the Stormlands, eager to seize the Iron Throne by fire and blood. Stannis Baratheon, driven by his rigid sense of duty, declares himself the rightful heir, dismissing both Joffrey and Bara as usurpers. And Renly, Baratheon, ever ambitious and charismatic, rallies the support of the Reach and a portion of the Stormlands, positioning himself as a more palatable alternative to his older brother. The War of the Five Kings erupts with a ferocity unseen in generations. The Riverlands become a ravaged battleground. The North, under the leadership of Robb Stark, declares its independence, seeking to carve out its own kingdom free from the machinations of the Iron Throne. Chaos reigns supreme. Amidst the carnage, Barra Baratheon emerges as a formidable leader. Trained by her father and guided by Tywin and Joanna Lannister, she proves to be a skilled strategist and a courageous warrior. She rallies her loyalists, leading them into battle with unwavering determination. Her army, a patchwork coalition of Stormlanders, Dornishmen, and Valarmen, faces overwhelming odds, but Barra's unwavering resolve inspires them to fight on. As Barra struggles to hold her ground, the Targaryens begin to gain momentum. Viserys, fueled by his delusions of grandeur and his insatiable lust for power, ruthlessly carves a path through the Stormlands, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Daenerys Targaryen, the exiled princess, emerges from the east with dragons. At her command, her arrival dramatically shifts the balance of power. The war rages on for years, claiming countless lives and leaving Westeros in ruins. Loyalties shift and betrayals abound. Cersei Lannister, consumed by her ambition and driven by a desperate desire to protect her children, makes a pact with Viserys Targaryen. She promises him the Iron Throne in exchange for his support, plotting to install Joffrey as his puppet ruler. However, her alliance with the Targaryens proves to be a fatal mistake. As the Targaryen forces advance, Stannis Baratheon, ever the pragmatist, forms an alliance with Daenerys Targaryen. Recognizing her strength and her claim to the Iron Throne, he offers her his support in exchange for her acknowledgement of his rightful place as Robert's heir. The final battle takes place at Harrenhal, the ancient and cursed castle that has witnessed so much bloodshed. The forces of Barra Baratheon, bolstered by the remnants of the North and the Riverlands, clash with the combined armies of Cersei, Lannister, and Viserys Targaryen. The battle is long and brutal. Heroes fall and legends are forged. Amidst the chaos, Barra confronts Cersei in a climactic duel. The two women, locked in a deadly embrace, fight with a ferocity fueled by years of resentment and hatred. Barra, armed with her father's warhammer, proves to be the stronger warrior. She defeats Cersei, shattering her illusions of power and leaving her broken and defeated. As the battle reaches its climax, Daenerys Targaryen arrives with her dragons. The fiery beasts rain down destruction upon the Targaryen forces. Turning the tide of the battle in Barra's favor, Viserys, consumed by rage and despair, is cornered by Stannis Baratheon and is executed for his treachery. With Cersei defeated and Viserys dead, the remaining forces of the Targaryen-Lannister alliance surrender. The War of the Five Kings is finally over. But Westeros is left scarred and battered, its people weary and disillusioned. In the aftermath of the war, a council is convened to determine the future of the realm. Barra Baratheon, weary of bloodshed and disillusioned by the machinations of power, surprises everyone by renouncing her claim to the Iron Throne. She acknowledges Daenerys Targaryen as the rightful queen, recognizing her strength, her compassion, and her dragons. Daenerys, grateful for Barra's selfless act and impressed by her leadership skills, offers her a position of power in her new regime. She names Barra as her hand, tasking her with the rebuilding of Westeros and the implementation of reforms that will ensure a more just and equitable society. As the realm slowly begins to heal, an unexpected romance blossoms between Bara Baratheon and Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Ilya Martell. They had fought side by side throughout the war, and Aegon helped her in so many aspects of rebuilding the kingdom. United by their shared experiences and their commitment to a better Westeros, they fall deeply in love. In a move that would have been unthinkable just years before, Daenerys sanctions their marriage, uniting the houses of Baratheon and Targaryen in a bond of love and loyalty. This unexpected union becomes a symbol of hope for a war-torn realm, proving that even in the darkest of times, love and reconciliation can prevail.